try to overturn the result of an election with unelected people giving
Gentlemen
testimony?
will suspend. This hearing will be considered in an orderly fashion. The gentleman will not yell out, and he will not attempt to disrupt the proceedings.
An explosive kickoff to Monday's impeachment hearing, both sides firing shots and digging in. Then a historic announcement Tuesday, articles of impeachment charging President Trump with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress.
In service to our duty to the Constitution and to our country, the House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing 2 articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors.
I'm Sam Roberts of the New York Times, and welcome to the New York Times Close Up. We'll talk politics in a moment. Later on, I'll be talking to New York Times columnist Gail Collins about her fascinating new book, No Stopping Us Now, The Adventures of Older Women in American History. And trust me, there's no stopping Gail Collins. But we begin with another big political week. The House Judiciary Committee heard testimony from lawyers spelling out the cases for and against impeaching the president. Articles of impeachment formally announced. A full House vote in favor of impeaching seems all but certain at this point. But what about the political fallout from impeachment? The Real Clear Politics average of major polls on whether to impeach and remove Trump from office holding mostly steady since the hearings began, 48% in favor, 45% against. Politico reports that Republican groups are spending millions on TV ads in swing districts that have moderate Democratic incumbents, branding impeachment as totally partisan. Republican pollsters say Trump is rising in battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. They say he's ahead of every Democrat in those states. So will a strong economy and stock market outweigh impeachment and scandal in 2020? And meanwhile, no Black or Hispanic candidates in next week's Democratic debate. How will minority voters, a critical constituency for the Democrats, react to that? Let's take the political pulse. Joining us, Trip Gabriel, national correspondent for the New York Times, Jonathan Ellis, a senior politics editor at the Times, and Clyde Haberman, a contributing writer at the Times. Look at those poll numbers that we talked about. It looks like the country is sort of just as split as the House and the Senate are. Is that a reflection of where those two bodies are going to wind up?
Well, it's interesting, Clyde, to compare the national polls. They are frozen, as you mentioned, in terms of favoring or disfavoring impeachment. They kind of moved into that position after the details of the Ukraine scandal first became public in late September. But there is there's a disconnect between the battleground state polls, and you referred to some Republican-generated polls of battleground states. But there's been some public polling. There's been a poll out of Wisconsin recently, and the New York Times Upshot Siena poll a little while ago also showed the same thing, that this is potentially benefiting Donald Trump in those swing states.
Why? Why does he benefit when the Democrats, regardless of partisanship, are putting out what appear to be facts, or at least what appear to be charges? The White House is not letting Trump's people rebut these charges. We have a lot of people saying they're phony, they're not real, but not rebutting them with facts. Why are people coming up to the conclusion that this helps Trump?
We're in an age this year, going back to 2016, and partisanship is so baked in, most people's approach to everything that, the facts are superfluous, and they're both camps have their own sources of information. Both camps have their own, influential people in the media they listen to, and facts are not particularly changing people's minds.
But let's be clear. Donald Trump should be doing a lot better than he is. So it may be the case that
Doing a lot better. Why? Because the economy is
exactly the economy is booming. The unemployment rate is lower than some economists thought it could ever go. So a president who has that behind him should be doing a lot better in his.
But to get
re-election
reelected, he doesn't have to be doing all that much better.
Oh, of course not. But it may be the case that the impeachment proceedings maybe are ticking up polling for him by a couple of points or something. But the impeachment overall, the scandals of his time overall, are obviously dragging down his overall poll numbers and approval rating.
But why does getting impeached make him do better?
Well, he has a core of support that's unshakable, it seems, and then there will be a lot of people who feel that the way to, if they're not happy with him, that the way to unseat him is next November's election. That having been said, impeachment exists constitutionally for a very good reason, and I'm in the camp that feels this man has, on many levels, gone above anything approaching what is acceptable in politics. And if it may be politically unwise in the end to go back to the polls that Tripp just cited, but it doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. At some point, there has to be a line drawn and said, enough is enough. There are indecencies beyond which we can't go.
And obviously Nancy Pelosi concluded that.
Clearly, and she's not without her own political calculus.
What seems a little surprising to me, and maybe my standards are still too high, is that very few, if any, Republicans have said, look, what he did or seemed to have done is improper, but it falls, below the level of impeachment.
And then, a lot of the Republican defenses are not necessarily rebutting a lot of the facts that Democrats have laid out in making their case. A lot of the Republican defenses are more about the procedure with which the Democrats are conducting these hearings and that kind of thing.
Meanwhile, we have things going on in Congress that seem to be constructive. We have Congress, the Democrats in the House working with the president on trade, on defense bill, on prescription drugs. How do we reconcile these two things?
They're not irreconcilable. Each party has to show that it can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think the Democrats have shown that in the House, and the Republicans in the Senate have basically done nothing, with the exception, of course, putting the judges that they like on the federal courts. But Mitch McConnell's no dope, and he recognizes that there has to be some productive legislation. So yes, they've come up with budget agreements. They've come up with a replacement for NAFTA, and I think it's self-interest in each party's case.
And the Democrats don't want to be a one-note.
Absolutely.
What do we look forward to in the debate next week? This is the last debate, I guess, of the year, end of the decade. What should we be seeing?
I think that, as the polls in the early voting states, particularly Iowa and New Hampshire, get tighter and tighter, and we have a new potential leader in New Hampshire, Pete Buttigieg. He's the leader in Iowa in most recent polling. I think we expected he'd take a lot of incoming in the last debate, and he didn't in particular, but I think now we've seen Elizabeth Warren come out and go after him, almost by name, and even Joe Biden, a little bit lately. So I expect that he will be under fire for some of the issues that have come up recently, things like transparency and whether he's liberal enough for the current base of the Democratic Party.
If he wins New Hampshire and Iowa, how solid a victory is that?
It will test the whole history of the four front-loaded states, the ones that vote before Super Tuesday, because traditionally, if you win Iowa and you win New Hampshire or one of the other, you gain great momentum going into South Carolina and into Super Tuesday. Buttigieg is a unique candidate at the moment. He has low single-digit support among African-American voters. They are the dominant electorate in South Carolina. They're a major part of the more diverse electorates in the Super Tuesday states. So it could either crash to a halt, after early state victories, or it could, reflect the pattern in past cycles in which that early state momentum, generates a lot more support in some of the later states.
Joe Biden still showing support among black voters. Are they going to be turned off at all by seeing an all-white debate cast?
No, I really don't think so. I think to some degree we in the media overdo that part, as if certain segments of our population will only support their own segment of the population. I think the feeling among African Americans is the same as it is among Democrats in general, which is we want whoever is the best person to beat Donald Trump next November. And I don't think people care quite as deeply. I'm not saying they don't care at all, but quite as deeply as some of us would have readers believe, that it has to be somebody from their own ethnicity.
I think you're probably right about that, and just as the same thing about a woman to some extent.
Yeah.
And also there's always the vice presidency as well. What about Mike Bloomberg? Obviously spending a lot of money and already showing some perceptible movement in the polls.
He's also testing the, the historic received wisdom on the primary contest. He's going to skip the first 4 states. I mean, that's never worked for anyone. Most New Yorkers remember Rudy Giuliani's flame out when he decided he was going to wait until Florida, and it was all over for him after the early voting states. Bloomberg's dropping a fortune into television ads and into online digital ads.
And good ones too.
Yeah, very good.
And he's gaining some support in the polls. He's about 5 or 6% in some of these New Hampshire polls I've seen, and that's a lot better than some of the folks that have been in from the beginning. So,
And I believe he's gotten 5% in a couple of national polls as well. Mm-hmm. Our New York Times polling average for this week, I believe, has him at 4%. So that's better than a lot of other candidates have done. Some of that advertising money is at least paying off to that extent, although some experts will tell you that television advertising can give you a bump, but it's sort of a fleeting bump. So
all he needs is a fleeting bump in this campaign.
do remember that he spent $250 million to become mayor and stay mayor. So God only knows what multiple of $250 million he's going to spend to become president.
Clyde, very quickly, the federal government now saying it likes to withhold federal money from schools that fail to counter discrimination against Jews. Is this going to increase or decrease anti-Semitism?
It's debatable. I think it's a cynical move. I mean, he's classifying Jews on the basis of race and nationality. Judaism is neither a race nor a nationality. It seems to me it raises, for a lot of people, if you're going to go that nationality route, it raises the dual loyalty issue that Jews have been plagued with for decades in this country and elsewhere, that their loyalties are for another state other than the one where they live. I think this is a very cynical move to try and peel off a few Jewish votes and maybe solidify the evangelical base, but it has a potential time bomb built in.
Thanks to my Times colleagues, Trip Gabriel, Jonathan Ellis, and Clyde Haberman. Coming up next, Gail Collins talks about her terrific new book on the ups and downs of older women in American history. What do Eleanor Roosevelt, Rosie the Riveter, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Nancy Pelosi have in common? All older women who had an impact on American history. New York Times columnist Gail Collins takes a deep dive on the achievements of women in America in her wonderful new book, No Stopping Us Now: The Adventures of Older Women in American History. In the Times book review, Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes called the book, quote, a chronicle of the herky-jerky nature of older women's journey to progress in the United States over the years. It's eye-opening, brimming with new information, and, as you'd expect from Gail Collins, a lot of fun. Older women, I have a sort of vested interest in asking this question. How do we define older?
Well, see, it depends. That's one of the important questions we have here. If you look through the history, at different periods in time, wholly different perceptions of what older means.
Now, is that because we are living longer, so older keeps getting older?
No. For instance, in my favorite beginning for this thing was when the first colonists came over, and they're all guys, and they're writing back to England saying, please send us some wives. And their requirements are they should be civil and under 50 years of age. Because, I mean, you're popular. You're very, very popular if you're just a woman, and what age you are doesn't matter all that much. And then later on, you get to a point, my favorite, remember that you're not getting older, you're getting better, hair color and commercial. If you actually read the ad, it's these days, if you're over 25, you're old. And da-da-da. That's in the 1970s. Suddenly, you're old when you're 25, and now you look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Nancy Pelosi. People do not sit around saying, "Wow, these are really older women." They say, "Oh my God, what's she doing now? What's going to happen next?"
And they sure are having impact.
Damn straight.
Now, are we doomed to perpetual changing definitions of what's old and what isn't?
Probably, but what you kind of look at is how do women compare to men about this? I mean, there was a very, very long period in our history when men were kind of distinguished when they were older, and nobody went around saying, "Oh my God, you know, what can you? You're 50. Oh my Lord in heaven, that's the end of the rope." But things got closer and tighter, and that's what I'm sort of looking at. How do the differences between the sexes kind of measure up over, and what makes that difference over the years?
Well, we're looking, for instance, at the presidential race, and we've got a lot of guys in their 70s. Is it harder to be an older man than an older woman?
Well, it is interesting that out of all of the candidates in their 70s, the one that nobody talks about age about is Elizabeth Warren. Because she just looks so spunky and she's bouncing around all over the place, and it's just nothing that would occur to you. So this is an important moment. I'm not sure what it will mean in the long run, but it's an important moment.
When did you think you'd be old? I mean, I'm now in my early 70s, and you know.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I could never imagine. I mean, that used to seem ancient.
I don't know. I think we've written stuff too about it. It's in many ways, it just depends on how you feel. I mean, if you feel like if you're 25 and you feel
I feel totally immature.
Well, there you go. See, that's a good sign.
And is there still age discrimination? I mean, is there a glass ceiling? It still must be hard to get a job if you're older.
Yeah, it's particularly once you're in a job, except when it comes to promotions. I mean, you've just got a lot of protections because you're sort of there. It's hard.
But are the protections legal?
Yeah, yeah, you do against age discrimination, but it's harder for women because the courts have mushed up gender discrimination and age discrimination. So if you file a suit saying, I'm 50 and I didn't get my promotion, they can come back and say, well, was that about gender? Maybe we should have that argument first, and it can just go on forever. But, maybe it's not gender, maybe it's age. Let's go back and have that argument. It's very weird. That doesn't make you a more powerful litigant, but it doesn't. It just screws things up somehow.
Gail, the title of the book is There's No Stopping Us Now, but we still don't have an Equal Rights Amendment that hasn't been ratified. We haven't had a woman president. In New York, we haven't had a woman who's mayor or governor. And the only senator we've had, if I remember correctly, got the job at first by appointment. So, have we gotten that far that there's no stopping us yet?
Well, certainly in terms of gender, there's a lot of ways to go. If you mush in the age thing, I don't think that's as much of a problem. As I said, look at Elizabeth Warren. But we haven't had a woman president. We haven't had the Equal Rights Amendment has seemed a more complicated story to me, and it's never been the thing that just drives me crazy, as opposed to many of my friends. But we've got a long way to go before every little girl in America can. Although I do remember when Hillary Clinton was first named senator, and then there was a huge thing, and she was on everywhere. And my niece was at that point just a little girl, and she turned to my sister and said, "Can men be senators?" And you think about that generation that's grown up with that whole different vision. I mean, things are changing.
That's progress. at least in thought. Who among older women do you most respect historically and today?
Well, historically, oh gosh, there's just so many of them out there. The one that just sort of knocked me out in so many ways was Elizabeth Cady Stanton, because she was coming along and her great cause, as for most of her friends, was abolition. It was before the Civil War, but they couldn't speak in public because women weren't supposed to speak in public. It was shocking. They were harlots. It was a horrible, 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 and it was driving them all crazy. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton figured out, but I am a grandmother. Look at my gray hair. Look at me, I am a grandmother. I am way too old to be a problem. And then she was out there, riding on trains, playing cards with soldiers, climbing up mountains, giving really, really radical speeches about not just abolition, but divorce reform, all this stuff. And she got away with it because she figured out how to use her age to make it all work out.
Because she had wisdom and maturity.
Well, in theory, but at least, she had gray hair, and so she could do it all. And that's one of my favorite stories. Anyway.
And today?
Today, wow, well, there's so many today. I mean, right at this very minute, Nancy Pelosi is running the world.
Boy, yes.
If you talk to Democrats, she is the goddess of the world at this point in time because she's standing up to Donald Trump. She organizes her party. She keeps things in control.
And doesn't flinch.
And doesn't flinch and just, she's the one of the moment. And of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg also, who is wildly, wildly loved and respected by all the Democrats in the country and even many Republicans. So those two I would say are really on the top of the world right now.
Men are getting into this too more and more, but how far should women go to change their appearance to look younger?
Many people have different theories about that. Certainly it's one of my favorite thoughts about this whole thing. Nora Ephron said when she was talking about how things had changed for women, back some time ago, and she said, it's not about better living through exercise, and it's not about our equal rights fight. It's about hair coloring, for God's sake. We can get away with so much more now as far as age goes because we don't go gray unless we choose to do so. So that's really been transformative. And there's a history of hair dye in this country that's kind of wonderful that goes right back to the beginning. But for a long time, it didn't look very good anyway, so it didn't work out, and your hair fell out. It was terrible, but
that's progress.
That's a big one.
Thanks to Gail Collins and her new book, and I'll add my thoughts on CODA next. There they go again. City Councilman Joseph Borelli and Stephen Matteo have introduced legislation to study whether Staten Island should secede from New York City. Given the goings-on in government, it's not surprising that some people are seeking an escape from the city, as Staten Islanders sought as recently as 1993, from the state, as Norman Mailer urged in his 1969 mayoral campaign that New York City become the 51st state, even from the United States, as Mayor Fernando Wood did in 1861, when he suggested that since the city's economy was so dependent on Southern cotton, it should join the Confederacy. Brooklynites still call their city's merger with Manhattan in 1898 the Great Mistake. There's no doubt it was foisted on them by the state legislature. Moreover, the victory margin in a non-binding vote in Kings County was suspiciously slender. Staten Islanders were the most gung-ho for consolidation into the greater city, though. Since then, it's fair to say that they edged out Queens for the title of Forgotten Borough. Just think back to 1940, when Woody Guthrie wrote his most famous folk song in a Manhattan hotel room. This land is your land. This land is my land. From the California to the Staten Island. Then he crossed out Staten Island and replaced it with the New York Island. Talk about the ultimate diss. Then came civil liberties lawyer Richard Embry's lawsuit. In 1989, the Supreme Court ended Staten Island's disproportionate dominion on the Board of Estimate. The least populous borough was casting the same 2 votes as the biggest. Now it's represented by only 3 of the 51 members of the City Council. In 1993, 65% of Staten Islanders voted to secede in a referendum that made Rudy Giuliani mayor. Since then, he kept his promise to make the Staten Island Ferry free and to close the Fresh Kills landfill. The borough also grew more diverse, from 80% white to 60%. Manhattan is still the city to many New Yorkers, but Brooklynites these days hardly feel like second-class citizens. Overwhelmed by gentrification and density, some residents there would rather be forgotten. Their advice to Staten Island secessionists: forget about it. For the New York Times and CUNY TV, I'm Sam Roberts.